When Disney first started teasing season 3 of DuckTales, they were showing us some really exciting stuff. Between art shared at Comic-Con and in preview clips, we started to see characters in classic DuckTales 1987 costumes, cameos from all sorts of Disney afternoon shows, and the promise of an homage that might be the least talked about Disney Duck series. This gave DuckTales fans a lot to look forward to for season 3. What we didn't expect is for almost all of that to come together packed into one single episode. Not only with additional references to the DuckTales movie, but changes that would completely alter the format of DuckTales itself. This is the episode I didn't expect. This is Quack Pack.
Quack Pack!
No, not that one! That one. Ever since Disney launched the new DuckTales series, I've spent a lot of time making videos about Disney Ducks. I talk about this show a lot. Maybe too much. But this episode, it left me speechless. Quack Pack starts by taking everything we know about DuckTales and throwing it out the window. At least at first. From the opening moments of this episode, it's obvious that something is wrong. The characters are all wearing different outfits. The room of the mansion seems smaller. And everyone is calling way too much attention to everything that everyone else is doing. And there's a laugh track?
Uncle Donald, does something feel, I don't know, off?
Well, everything seems perfectly normal to me.
This is DuckTales as a 1990s Friday night sitcom. And that's a wild idea. But do you know what's even crazier? The episode doesn't even address it until about a third of the way through. There's no setup, no build-up. This episode just starts as if DuckTales has always been a goofy family sitcom, and it doesn't even bother to explain itself until almost halfway through the episode. There is a story-driven reason for why DuckTales is like this, and why Donald suddenly has his intelligible voice back, and I'm gonna talk about that. But first, I want to talk about the other reason this episode is like this. This is the DuckTales crew flexing their creative muscles and experimenting with the restrictions of animation. And once you understand what's going on here, it's kind of brilliant. At conventions, in blogs, and in interviews, the DuckTales creators occasionally talk about the concept of a bottle episode in TV. That's a story that features as few guest stars as possible and takes place entirely on a show's most common sets. It's supposed to be an easier episode to write and produce, almost like taking a break for the crew. But DuckTales showrunners have said a couple times that this doesn't really work in a cartoon. On a live-action TV series, you already have the sets ready to go, but in animation, you have to design all of them. This actually isn't the first time DuckTales has tried to make a bottle episode. They've done it once before, with McMystery at McDuck Manor. But the creators learned that a bottle episode in animation that's easy for storyboarding was hard on design and writers. But if it was easy on design, it was hard on writers and board artists. That kind of makes it seem like a true bottle episode that acts as a breather for production might be impossible in animation. But the DuckTales crew came up with one more idea. According to an interview with Entertainment Weekly, showrunners Frank Agones and Matt Youngberg asked what would actually make a bottle episode in DuckTales that would be easy to produce. Youngberg proposed a simple setup. 4 backgrounds, 6 shots, and everybody just kind of talking. And that turned a light on in Frank's head, just like a multi-camera sitcom. So that's what they did with this episode of DuckTales. Patterned it off a TV family sitcom. But that's not a change you can make easily. For 2 seasons, DuckTales has been a show with large, dynamic backgrounds and a healthy mix of shots and camera angles. If a new episode suddenly brought the audience back to familiar locations but shrunk them down into a cramped set, it'd be incredibly obvious that something was off. And it is, but on purpose. To solve this problem, DuckTales leaned into it, starting off the episode as a multi-camera sitcom, different from the regular show and complete with cheesy jokes and pauses and a laugh track, but with no explanation.
Where's that music coming from? Why are the lights fading? What is happening?
The result is weird, it's awkward, but it's also a brilliant experiment in TV animation production. DuckTales uses this awkward transition as a driving point in the story. It's true that this big change is thrown at us with no explanation, but as the viewer starts to catch on that something's not right here, so does one of the cast members. Huey starts noticing that reality is off kilter, and while the rest of the family is busy dealing with the wacky hijinks of a typical family comedy and trying to get ready for a family photo, he starts to unpack everything that's wrong. Why is everyone wearing different clothes? Why does there seem to be weird music and laughs hanging in the background? Was that a commercial? Does everybody really have a catchphrase? Is the mansion missing a wall?
Oh, don't be daft, lad. Of course there's a fourth wall. Have you actually looked at it?
There's a lot going on here, which makes it even more incredible that this episode is also a nostalgic callback. 3 nostalgic callbacks, actually. The whole reason DuckTales is suddenly a sitcom is because Donald accidentally makes a wish on a genie's lamp, bringing the story of the original DuckTales movie into the new show.
Wonder of wonders! Oh, I'm free at last! Shabooey!
To add another layer on it, the TV show that Donald wished them into is called Quack, an obvious callback to the post-Disney Afternoon series that starred Donald raising a bunch of teenage versions of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And elements of that show pop up all over this episode. Finally though, this story calls in one more homage to another Disney Afternoon series.
Hiya, neighbor.
Hi, Goofy.
Every proper family sitcom needs the goofy, invasive neighbor that just bursts in the door. And there's no neighbor more goofy than Goofy himself. Considering the structure of this episode, this is a great place to naturally slot Goofy into the story. But it's actually way better than just that. Goofy is kind of the Disney dad role model. Between Goof Troop and a Goofy movie, this character went from being a silly physical comedy cartoon character into a genuine loving father figure. That's very much something DuckTales has been working to do with Donald since the start of the new series. In old Disney cartoons with the triplets, Donald was sort of this reluctant caretaker of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. But now, he's a protective father figure who deeply cares about them. DuckTales matures Donald as a parent in the same way Goof Troop and a Goofy movie matured Goofy. So when Donald is having family problems, there's nobody better to give him solid advice, dad to dad, than Goofy himself.
Is it so wrong to want to be normal?
I reckon every family has their own normal.
This scene just works on so many levels. It has the heartwarming family lesson speech, the thing that was the apex of so many stories in old family sitcom TV. It acknowledges Donald's new role in DuckTales as a father figure, and it reinforces that with the wisdom of another character who's gone through that same transition. And on top of that, it gives us a few minutes with the best version of Goofy. Goofy as a dad, complete with family photos of him, Max Goof, and even a tiny shot of Roxanne. This is truly the heart of the episode, which is important because while this is a parody of sitcoms to an extent, the DuckTales crew said it was also important to them that it was authentic to that genre. I think that's something that actually kind of pulls off. It's a little exaggerated, but for the most part, these versions of these characters fall within very real tropes of family sitcom TV. It's more than just catchphrases and laugh tracks, it's the archetypes of Dewey as the prankster or Webby as the precocious but cute little girl.
Have you seen the meat tenderizer?
What?
No reason. Cute girl stuff.
I also really appreciate that despite the fact that these are sitcoms versions of these characters, they're definitely authentic to who they are. A lot of these lines and moments and jokes and scenes could be pulled into the normal show and still work just fine. All you gotta do is get rid of the laugh track. This is definitely all a bit dated compared to modern TV family sitcoms, but it fits the mold for a very specific era of television.
This is your idea of the perfect family? How long have you been in that lamp?
Ages. The long ago year of 1990.
That's incredibly intentional, because not only were the 1990s a golden era for this kind of sitcom, it's also the same year that the DuckTales movie came out, which debuted Gene the Genie. Gene the Genie, who just happens to be portrayed by Jaleel White, famous for portraying Steve Urkel on Family Matters. He was also Sonic the Hedgehog in the 1990s, a character Ben Schwartz, the voice of Dewey, just did recently for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so that's kinda neat. Still, with everything going on in this episode, I have to wonder if it met its goal of being an easy-on production bottle episode. The format of the 3-camera sitcom setup, the limited backgrounds, the limited scenes, and having it dialogue-driven were all a really good idea to try and create an animation bottle episode. But there's enough going on in this episode that I have to wonder if the DuckTales crew got so into making this idea that they worked themselves out of that bottle. Not only do all the characters have new costumes, many of which are awesome references to the 1987 DuckTales series, but the episode stops partway for a commercial for Pep. That was probably a lot of work to make. The third act of the story also has a ton of unique scenes as our heroes run backstage in the TV show they're trapped in, running away from the audience. And the audience is made up of a ton of new, unique character designs. Grotesque, terrifying humans that are not only completely freaky to the world of DuckTales that doesn't have fleshy humans, but they're a callback to the human characters in the original Quack Pack. With all these unique elements stacking on top of each other, along with the cameos, the non-typical storytelling, and more, it's kind of hard to imagine that this bottle episode really stayed in its bottle. Even so, you have to appreciate the effort. The DuckTales crew has tried to create an easy bottle episode multiple times, but it seems like every time they do it, they just get too caught up in a fun idea and wind up making more work for themselves. Not only do I love the spirit of experimentation that creates that situation, but I like that even when the original point of the idea was to make an episode that's easy to produce, when that doesn't work out, DuckTales still goes full force to make the episode as good as possible. I don't know if Quack Pack is my favorite episode of this season so far. I think it's kind of weird and hard to follow. It's so awkward and strange that I kind of couldn't believe what I was watching. But at the same time, it has a ton of moments I like. And it's doing something new with TV animation. It's pushing a boundary. And I will never stop loving shows that ask that creative question. What can be done here that can't normally be done in a cartoon? Quack Pack asks that question and answers it, creating something new, unique, and filled with nostalgia. It may be weird, it may be awkward, and it may not be my favorite, but I've got to be honest. What DuckTales did here is incredibly impressive. That's all for this week. As usual, thank you so much for sticking with me and these reviews. If you like them, please hit all the usual like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons so you know when new videos arrive and so the YouTube algorithm will be nice to me. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and as always, take it easy, Internet.